What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. It's the end of the month. We are recording on the day after Thanksgiving, so even though we are stuffed in terms of food, we are not stuffed in terms of football talk, because obviously we have a big weekend coming up, obviously with the league decider, the Clausura decider, up between Guarani and Cerro Porteño, as we figure out which of these two will win the 2025 Clausura. I can't believe we're actually going into the final day. I think a lot of people expected that, but hey, here we are with some more drama. Obviously, we are talking as well 7 days prior to the big World Cup draw happening in DC. We already know where Paraguay will be in. We're in pot three. Maybe we could talk about some potential group of deaths or some groups that you want to be in. I know obviously Fede has some opinions about specific rivals. Ralph and I have our opinions about where they should play, but we can talk about the opponents as well. And then obviously we have the continental finals, one that happened here in the Paraguay country in Paraguay with the Copa Sudamericana final to Lanús winning it for their second time overall in really maybe not the most entertaining game possible, but hey, they got the title. We'll talk about that. And of course, the Copa Libertadores final happening in Lima this weekend as well as Palmeiras taking on Flamengo. Palmeiras, obviously, with two Paraguayans, our captain Gustavo Gomez and Ramon Sosa there. So a lot going on in the country. I could see, obviously, Fede is in the cheery move with his lights in the background. We're obviously right here in the Christmas season already. We're heading into December, the final month of the year. And then we're heading into 2026, a big year for a lot of Paraguayans. But Fede, I mean, I'll go to you first, and yeah, I'll just ask you, how's the mood been, in Paraguay with, obviously we had the Sudamericana final. We obviously will have the World Cup draw coming up soon as well. Obviously, and of course, the champion of this clausura, where Guarani or Cerro Porteño will win a title for the first time in years.
Hi Roberto, hi Ralph, hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Like always, great to be back for another one, guys. And oh, we have so much going on. First of all, happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys, especially to our American listeners. We got people that listen to us from all over the globe, but especially to our American listeners. I actually have lovely memories of eating a lot of turkey and a lot of those delicious dishes that you guys eat up over there, and also spending time with the family. I know it's that kind of holidays, that kind of spirit. Also, the holiday season starting off. That's why I got the lights on. You got to put some spirit to it, and it is that I'm talking about spirit. It is that time of the year where we have finals and finals, guys. I mean, I was just listening to you, Roberto, and yeah, we're coming off the Sudamericana, and now we got this weekend, the Libertadores. We got so much going on also in the Clausura. We're gonna have another championship decided during the first days of December, which would actually end the calendar of the Paraguayan football. But yeah, just a couple of days ago, I mean, I was there in Defensores de Chaco, a huge turn from Atletico Mineiro fans, especially, right? I mean, they were definitely the home team, I would say, from looking at it from the stands. But Lanús fans made a lot of noise, and they got the best out of the penalty shootout. It wasn't a pretty game from from my eyes, as I would say, from a lot of Paraguayans that were also in the stands watching the game, that paid for their tickets. It all came down to the shootout, to the penalty shootout, and well, it ended up going to Lanús, especially because of what the goalkeeper did in the penalty shootout. But congrats to Jose Canale, right? I mentioned him several times, pulling through, making it happen, taking over in the starting role, and he actually had a really good game in this final. Felt right at home, and the home fans actually made him feel that way. Also, it was nice to see them with the tereré out and feeling like back at home. Now we'll see what happens in Libertadores. Too bad for Junior Alonso. Before I get away from the Sudamericana, I was looking at it, two straight finals for him, and he hasn't been able to win the title, so he must be feeling down about what his team has been going through. But hopefully we do have Gustavo Gomez and Amiguito Ramon Sosa making his first title. Why not? With Palmeiras, it could be a special weekend for them. In Libertadores, we know what Gustavo Gomez has done there in Palmeiras. He's already a legend, and he could actually win another one. So finals and more finals, as we're going to talk about Cerro Porteño trying to end the year as champion and break this 10-year drought, guys. I mean, being second so many years, falling always in that second place, their fans are really fed up about it, and we're definitely going to talk about that and everything that's been going on with the other clubs. I'm just looking at Olimpia. I'm looking at Libertad. I don't know what's going to happen with their coaches. I don't know what's going to happen with them going forward. I'm talking about the big teams in Paraguayan League, even though the showdown is going to be between what Cerro does against Tembetaru and what Guarani can actually do in their game. They are obviously on the against the ropes. They got to win and wait for a miracle from Tembetaru.
Absolutely. There's a lot going on in the local league as well. And here, stateside, Ralph, obviously, all eyes are on December 5th with the World Cup draw. Obviously, we have to find out that a lot of Paraguayans, be it here or be it abroad, are really looking to see who their first three opponents will be for their first World Cup in 16 years. Always a big show and obviously expectant. I already see a lot of people already making their sort of simulators. They're already group of deaths, their group of lives, their easiest group, hardest group, whatever. They're doing everything. It's exciting times, I guess, not just in Paraguay with the league and obviously with the continental final that we saw with the Sudamericana, but also here in the United States as all eyes go to DC in about 7 days' time.
Yeah, that's right. The kind of all the waiting will be over, like you say, people running the simulations, wanting to see where they can be. And I think it's a really big moment, especially for Paraguayan Americans, that are in the US, because they're looking at two things, not just the rivals, but also will they play close to me? So I've been speaking to a few people that didn't go to San Antonio because it's too far there in the Northeast. But then someone like me over here in Texas, I'm hoping the games are near, if not in Houston, in Dallas. So it's going to be a fun time, I think. And as soon as that draw happens, then also for Alfaro and his team, it's really like time to get preparing because then you start studying, then you start thinking about how you're going to play, which players you might need for those games, because the key thing will be to get through that group stage, especially for Alfaro. We talked about it before, right? That with Ecuador, he didn't manage that. He got them to the World Cup, but he didn't get them past that first stage. And I think for Paraguay, we've seen this year in all the youth tournaments, they've managed to get through the group stage. And so they're aiming for that for sure for the senior side next year. So it's going to be a big moment next week when that draw happens.
Absolutely. Same thing for me when it comes to wanting to see them in the Northeast. Obviously there's three games being played, three stadiums in the Northeast with Philadelphia, Boston, New York. So a lot of and a huge Paraguayan community in those communities as in this part of the country as well. So everyone's expecting on that as well. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting times the next week. I guess now let's go into what you saw on the weekend at the Defensores Fede. Obviously Lanús winning their second ever title in their history. Wasn't the most entertaining game to say the least, but hey, at least it showed that Lanús and Mineiro fans have a good time. And, I think, now what is it? A third Copa Sudamericana final in the country. Obviously, we have the World Cup coming soon, and as well as the Pan American Games. I know that we're not gonna see the Libertadores final next year, but hey, there's still a couple more years before those two events with the World Cup and the Pan American Games. I think there should be a case that of the three games that we saw, because we saw what is it, Colo fans enjoying themselves, even though they lost to Independiente del Valle. Racing fans when they beat Cruzeiro, them enjoying themselves. The same thing for those, for Cruzeiro, and then the same now with Lanús and Mineiro. It was a boring game. And congrats to Lanús though, and like you said, Jose Canale winning it on home soil. But I think the thing that has come from all this is just the big hospitality, and I think talking to some friends, and maybe I'm sure you feel the same way. Maybe it's time for them to get a Libertadores final. I think it's been a while since we've been able to see a Libertadores final in Paraguay. That only happens when a Paraguayan team is there, but they're able to hold three successful Sudamericana finals without incident. I think it's time for a Libertadores final right before the big tournaments with the World Cup and the Pan American Games in 2030 and 2031.
Yeah, I like what you're hitting at, Roberto. I think it's a huge opportunity. And I think there is a chance for Paraguay to host a Libertadores final because of Cerro Porteño Stadium. Defensores de Chaco, they had to work a bit around it to get it on into shape for the Sudamericano final. I think the only stadium as of right now that you can play a Libertadores finals would be Cerro Porteño Stadium, where we already played the qualifiers, right, for a World Cup. So I mean, it's a chance. I think it's there for because Asunción and Paraguayan fans have treated all these events so well. Not just the hospitality, not just it doesn't matter if you're coming from Brazil, it doesn't matter if you're coming from very far away. You're welcome. We want you to be here. We want you to buy your stuff. We want you to feel comfortable in another country. We want to give you the water so you don't get hot here in our high temperature. We love doing that, and we do it with all the tourists that are here when they ask for directions, and it's a really nice feeling to have all those fans, to have that football atmosphere around the city. I think a lot of football fans appreciate that. That's why we have a huge turnout in the Costanera, where usually you have the fan fest there. It happened again during this final, but I would say the best atmosphere during these three finals that I lived, it was last year, 2024. The Racing fans. I mean, there were so many fans and they went crazy. It had been so many years for them to be champions. It was different this time around. Lanús had already been champion of Sudamericana. Their fans, they've been doing well in other tournaments lately, internationally. So their fans they came just to enjoy, I would say. They didn't come with that pressure that Racing fans came with last year. So we had that relaxed environment, I would say, before the game. Pre-match, there wasn't that going on between the fans of Atlético Mineiro and Lanús. Everybody was just having their time. And security-wise, I'm really proud of what I saw from the police, from the whole, just the way that everything has been handled from ever since they come into the country and the time that they leave. And then you hear and you see all these videos that go viral of the fans just talking wonderful things, the same beautiful things about Paraguay and the way they were treated, and we can't be any prouder, Roberto. And I think it's a great opportunity to have the Libertadores final. And I think we're heading that way, because 2030, I mean, that's the goal for the government. That's why all these huge events, these sporting events, are happening in Paraguay. We're getting ready for that. And as of right now, I'm proud. I'm happy about the situation, because game by game, we're making it happen, and no big problems, guys. We see what happens in Brazil. We see what happens in Argentina when they try to have and host these big games. And no, Paraguay doesn't have that problem. So next time, Conmebol, you have a problem, we got your stadiums ready.
Yeah, I think that's a great point by Fede, that so far things have always gone very well, and you haven't seen the security issues, which would be the main kind of barrier to hosting maybe the Libertadores. The other question could be that so far it's worked for having Asunción, because you always get teams that are nearby that actually come by land. So the thing about Asunción is the airport's not that big. So if you did have, I don't know, let's just say a Colombian team and a Peruvian team, and they're both coming by air, the fans, then they might have a problem. But the likelihood is you're going to get at least one Brazilian team in a final, or if not two. And so most people do end up traveling by land. I was looking at the stats. They said they got like 25,000 visitors from foreign, from different foreign countries, but mostly Brazil, Argentina, and only 6,000 used the airport. So, I mean, most people were coming over on buses and driving and that kind of thing, which is obviously much more manageable for the country in terms of infrastructure. So I think we're moving towards that Libertadores final. Like Fede says, probably La Nueva Olla is the only one that's ready right now. We saw, before the Sudamericana final, I think Ale Dominguez was there saying what we'd done and all this stuff, but really they'd just been painting. There hadn't been like some huge development or something in Defensores. So it is looking like La Nueva Olla would be your place to host this next big showcase, which is what we're looking for. And hey, they're hosting Shakira this week. That's a world-renowned international artist. Lots of infrastructure needed to build that stage, which we've seen how it affected some of the football last week. So it is ready for these international standard events. And so let's hope that Libertadores final ends up in Asunción in the not too distant future.
That would be great. That would be great to see. And yeah, obviously we'll have to see what happens from all the other sort of games that are going to happen beforehand. Obviously, Paraguay is obviously a country that is getting a lot of attention, as we spoke about, in terms of sporting perspective, and like you said, entertainment perspective as well. It's a good point what you said, Ralph, about the Shakira concert. Obviously, they have a lot of festivals. They have a lot of people coming to the country as well, doing like seminars and doing like specific sort of shows. So there is that attention, and yeah, obviously, football is sort of the main passion that the country loves, and so I think when it comes to those sort of events, I think it's all gearing up for them to what they do in 2030, and also how big it will be. Obviously, there's still, a little over 5 years until that. So we'll have to see what happens for that case as well. But obviously, as we talk about, Shakira playing at La Olla, there's going to be celebrations there afterwards if it goes to the way of Cerro Porteño, because obviously we have the league coming up to the end. We have two teams obviously fighting it out with Guarani and Cerro Porteño. Cerro Porteño are playing against Atlético Temperatario, the Defensores, this Sunday, and Guarani hosting Sportivo Luqueño at the Erico Galeano on the same time, 6 p.m. local time. Guys, I mean, look, what we saw, it was almost done for Cedro. They had a really good chance. They beat Libertad on the day over there last weekend at La Olla. Guarani did the job against General Caballero. I think that was always expected. But surely Cedro doesn't slip this away, Ralph. I'll go to you first on this one. I think it's been such a weird season for them. The fact that they had to go through the different managerial changes from Diego Martinez now with Jorge Bava, and he's really kind of transformed this team. It's not been pleasing on the eye. It's been sort of these ugly games, and of course them taking advantage of one and he's slipping up as well. But ultimately, you kind of feel that it looks like it's in Cerro Porteño's hand, especially now with the 1 point difference, and of course, them winning the head to head. It just feels as if though it feels like destiny for Cerro to win this Clausura.
Well, I mean, it's first against last, and the last team are already relegated. They've sold all their home allocation because they're actually the home team for this game, and they've sold all their home allocation to Cerro Porteño, so you can get it filled with fans. So it's going to feel like a home game for Cerro at the Defensores. I mean, everything is pointing that the Cerro Porteño should get the win to then become champions for the first time since 2021, but really is really the first, like, I don't know, real, I'm making the bunny ears, real championship since 2017, because obviously they won in 2020, but it was the Apertura got, moved months away because of COVID. And then the one they win in 2021, if you guys remember, there were still only 10 teams because they hadn't got all the teams in the division because they were figuring things out after COVID. So this is like really the first real one, 22 game title they've won since 2017, should they get that win. I mean, it all points in their favor. Like you said, I think the hardest game was last week in this run-in, which was the Libertad game, because we know Libertad, even though they're out of the running, they have the quality. And they've done the job against Guarani, so there was always a chance they could do it against Cerro. And what we saw was a really early goal from Gustavo Velasquez that kind of settled the nerves. But then still, that whole game was, I thought Cerro were the better team. They were dominating, but you're only winning by one goal, and there's always that chance the equalizer could come. And if you look at the last four games in the league, there's been two 1-0 wins. There's been the 0-0 draw, and there was the 2-1 win over Nacional where they're actually losing, and Nacional ended up getting two red cards. So, I mean, like you say, Roberto, it doesn't feel like a championship winning team because they're always like just winning games or finding it very difficult. But they've done the job to get to this point, right? Where they're ahead on points going into the final day, and they've got the last team. So it really is all in Cerro's hands to take the title, because obviously even a Guarani win wouldn't be enough should they beat Tembeteru, which they should. So I mean, it's all pointing there. What I think everybody's like watching, especially neutrals, is, are they going to slip up? Is something crazy going to happen on this final day that could make a difference? And either way, I think we're going to get a really close game. I think it's going to be a very tense day in the Defensores del Chaco on Sunday.
I expect for Cerro Porteño to do it. I think, the hardest game they already won, which was against Guarani, the direct rival, and now you're going up against a team that's already been relegated. They got nothing to play for. Guys are thinking about vacations. They're not going to ruin your day. I don't expect it to happen. But you never know. In Paraguayan football, we've seen so many weird things happen. And this tournament has been really weird in that sense because Guarani has been at top, and then we had that clash down between the best two teams of the tournament, and that's where Cerro Porteño took it away at home, and that's where I think when Roberto says, it's a slip up from Cerro, I say it was a slip up from Guarani. Guarani, it was the team that really had it at a certain point. And in that game in particular, they really let go of it just because of the way they wanted to play that game. They're thinking about the time mainly. And I'm still thinking about that game because I think that was the one that decided the title. I don't think, this game against Tempeta is really going to affect the outcome of the tournament. But maybe a surprise is there waiting for us. The Cerro Porteño team has never been steady, just like Rob mentioned. They were the best team, the best Paraguayan team, at least in the continent, with what they did in Libertadores. They got the squad ready to be champions at a certain point of this year. So they have one of the best squads, no doubt about it, in the Paraguayan league. But they don't play the prettiest football. So to me, it's not a magnificent champion if they're gonna be the team that wins it. That's why at a certain point I was maybe rooting more for Guarani because of the young players, because of what I saw of the way that they played. But they lost a couple of players, they lost the key games, and it really got away from them. So now it's definitely on Cerro Porteño to do it. It could be the first title for their coach. That when he got this team, I mean, it was already up there. He just needed to end the job. And I think he kind of put the pieces together in a certain way, find the right goalkeeper, find the right defense. I mean, the defense is really killing it now. I mean, you guys saw what Gustavo Velasquez did in the last game, even scoring. So, you got contributions from everybody. Iturbe, Sergio Araujo, who was injured most of the time with the other coach. You got Iturbe always making it happen. So I think they have enough. And they won the games that they needed to win before this one. They beat Libertad, they beat Guarani. They were able to win the hard ones, so you can't lose against them, Betare.
I agree. I think you should do that. So I guess we'll say it here on record, Fede, you got Cerro Porteño as the champion come this Sunday.
Yes, I got them winning.
Ralph, do you want to be superstitious? Do you want to be bold? Or do you actually want to be realistic and say, yes, Cerro are going to win the championship?
Yeah, I've got them winning the game. So by winning that, then they win the championships. And also just to mention, that gives them 46 points. So that's actually more than Libertad had in the Apertura and
Yep.
Olimpia in the Clausura last year. So even
Mhm.
though they're not a very good champion, it seems to be now that the par at the moment to become champion is that range of points.
With the win, they will also go to 85 in the aggregate, in the total table as well. So they will go to the Copa Libertadores group stage as well. Yeah, I agree. I think Cerro Porteño, even if it's been a weird season, it doesn't feel like a championship winning side. But ultimately, you have to play the games ahead of you and also hope that maybe teams slip up. And yeah, I don't think they slip it up against a poor Tempestad side that has just been relegated and are dead last in the Clausura. So we'll see what happens. Maybe there are some drama. You never know. It is Paraguay. Things can happen. Those things could occur. So we'll see what happens in there as well as we switch gears now to after we go into December. Obviously the last game of the Clausura will happen in the last day of November, and then we're going straight into December, the final month of the year. And with that, we have the World Cup draw. Officially, we have our pots. So Paraguay will be in pot three. They are with along, so they can't play against these sides. And I got these in front of me if you guys want to memorize it, which I'm sure you guys have for the next few days. In pot one, we have the three co-hosts. We have the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, and then we have the top nine countries according to the FIFA rankings: Spain, Argentina, France, England, Brazil, Portugal, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. As we know, Paraguay can't play against Argentina or Brazil because they are from the same continent. So no groups with either of the teams that they actually beat in the World Cup qualifiers. In pot two, we have Croatia, Morocco, Colombia, Uruguay, Switzerland, Japan, Senegal, Iran, South Korea, Ecuador, Austria, and Australia. The same thing applies for Paraguay. They can't play against the three South American teams in this one with Uruguay, Colombia, and Ecuador. In pot three, where Paraguay's in, they won't have to play these teams. Norway, sorry, no Erling Haaland against Omar Lerete matchup. We got Panama and Egypt, no Mo Salah against Gustavo Gomez. Algeria, Scotland, Tunisia, Ivory Coast, Uzbekistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. And then in pot four, we have the lesser teams of Jordan, Cape Verde, Ghana, Curacao, Haiti, New Zealand, the four playoff winners, which we don't know who it'll be, but it could be Italy, it could be Ukraine, it could be Sweden, any of those teams. And then the intercontinental playoff teams, which could be one of either Suriname, Jamaica, Bolivia, Iraq, New Caledonia, and I'm trying to forget the last one. I forgot who the last one is, but let me see if I can get that real quick. Yeah, Suriname, Bolivia, Iraq, DR Congo, New Caledonia, and Jamaica. So you already have our pots ready, and we obviously have our teams as well. I think the more interesting one, and I'll go to Ralph on this one first, is that if Paraguay get in their group with either Mexico or the United States, they are a pot three team, but they will fall in the position of two. So as we know, the first game is always A1 against A2, or one against two in general. They get to take it on if they are lucky. They can get the inaugural game against Mexico, the first game at the Azteca between the co-host, or if they're in the United States group, they will kick it off in Inglewood in Los Angeles against the country that they already faced last month. I mean, I had a lot of information given to you, but just your impressions of what Paraguay are in, or if there are some group of deaths or some really nice groups that you would want, just lay it on me, man. What do you feel about it?
Well, you mentioned the opening game. I mean, that would be pretty cool because if they play the opening game of the 26 World Cup, do they play the opening game of the 2030 World Cup? Because of course
Would
that's
be.
the idea, right? That's the
Yeah.
plan. So that would be pretty cool that they do that twice in a row. That said, historically, Paraguay has not done very well in the Azteca. It's at altitude, of course. They haven't done well against Mexico. I think they played Mexico City in World Cup qualifier. Mexico played Mexico in Mexico City, I wanted to say,
Yes,
in the World Cup
1986.
qualifier
1986. No,
as
no, in the
well.
World Cup as well,
Yeah.
1986.
And so I don't think they have a great record there. So maybe from that kind of side, symbolically it would be fun, but then I don't know if we want to take them on there compared to having just played in the US where we beat them. Yeah, I mean it's ultimately you're gonna get at least one European team in there. So what you're hoping is maybe it's a European side that they can feel they can compete with. But that said, at South Africa, they got Italy, who were defending world champions, and Alcaraz, who at the time was not really a big player. He wasn't very well known, shows up and scores that header, and they draw with them. So, hey, you don't know. Maybe the bigger teams will bring out something in Paraguay to play better. So I think I don't know. I'm torn between do you want like the good games early on, or do you want the easier draw just to make sure you can hopefully get through. In a way, I think I prefer the big games. Yeah, it only comes around every 4 years, or in the case of Paraguay, it's been every 16 years. So I would love, a World Cup game against, I don't know.
You want England again, don't you? You want Paraguay England again, just
Well,
like '06.
Paraguay England would be really boring though because of the way Tuchel's playing at the moment. So I don't know. That would be. I don't know if I want to see Tuchel and Alfaro go together. But yeah, let's get France. Let's get France. Let's get Germany. That would be pretty cool. I think from the
Yeah,
get.
I'm just looking at some history. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't think they played Portugal. I don't think they played the Netherlands in the World Cup. Those are two top seeds, Fede, just to give you some eye attention. I think the cool thing about this is that, you could get potential games that, if you look at your World Cup history or just in general, Paraguay don't play. You go back to 2010 when they played New Zealand and Slovakia. That was two teams they never played in before, and the fact that they had those, I think it adds to the special occasion of the World Cup is that you get some of these games that probably wouldn't happen unless it is a World Cup. So, I'm thinking off the top of my head, you get a group of, I don't know, Portugal, Australia, Paraguay, and then, put one of Curacao, for example, who've never been to the World Cup, their first ever time as well. So you add a group like that, I think from a neutral perspective, it is also kind of maybe a bit boring, maybe a bit dull. It's like, it's, not the main powerhouses. Well, if you want to put Portugal in there, but like you get what I'm saying. It's not the like a group of death or very attractive, but maybe for the Paraguayans, it also adds to that sort of mystique. Because I think even in 2025, I think there is still that sort of like, we go back to history of like when Paraguay had to play World Cups in, the 50s or in the 80s or even late in the 90s. Not a lot of people knew about Paraguay. Maybe they had seen their results, or maybe they see some videos or whatever, but I think there is still that sort of mystery there that, okay, let's say Paraguay get into a group with Haiti. One would think Paraguay could beat them 100%. It would feel as if though you talk to any Paraguayan out there, they would say 99.9% of them would say, yeah, Paraguay should beat them easily, but it is the World Cup. There is that sort of like feeling, for one thing for Paraguay, for them to step it up against the main powerhouses. It's also the case of not being complacent against the teams that are lesser than them. And even Alfaro said that in his press conference when he had all these games with, Korea, Japan, Mexico, and the United States. Those were all teams above them in the world ranking. I think the same should be said for teams that are below them. So they could take on a Jordan, a Ghana, Curacao, Haiti, etc. And we should always respect them regardless of where they are. And even if you do feel like, yeah, they should beat them at the World Cup. So yeah, it goes back to the point of, do you want the easy group or do you want the hard group? I mean, let's be real, man. The way the format works, I've been doing these simulations. I'm looking at like how it goes. You really only need is one win and not to get, let's say in the worst case scenario, Paraguay going as the best third place team with one win and I guess a draw. That's good enough. That is good enough. You can afford to lose one game and at least you're reassured of the next round because then it's like what happens there because you don't know what format you can be in because of the whole, like I said, round of 32. It could it's not as straightforward as saying, oh, the top two play against the, first against second or second against first, like that kind of thing. Like could be either one. So I think the odds are still the same regardless of what happens.
Yeah, and being on that pod that we are, you are thinking that okay, we're much better than a couple of these teams that are on pot four, especially. So yeah, I'm trying to get into Alfaro's head and probably think what he would want, just thinking from the strategy also point of it. But everyone has their own point of view, what they would want. I'm thinking obviously everything that's gonna move the World Cup is going to have fans watching the screens and the country, especially the country Paraguay, after not being in the last World Cups, the whole country's going to stop. Everybody's going to want to watch these games. So I'm thinking about the big teams. I'm thinking about the big games. I want a couple of those big games, but I also want to look at our group and think, okay, these are easy points. We're going to get this one. Hopefully there is a team like that. Maybe a playoff team could happen. I think you're going to feel like that. But this World Cup is going to give you that feeling in the preview because we have a lot more national teams now because FIFA opened it up, right? So you're going to feel that you're better than a lot of these teams. And even the powerhouses, when they look at their groups, they're going to think, oh, we're going to win these two very easily. But we're coming off a Club World Cup, but we had a lot of surprises, guys. And, the world of football gives you this all the time. And that's why I think FIFA is also doing this of just mixing up as much as they can and giving the opportunity to small countries, also to small islands, even because they don't have a lot of World Cups before. So I want that opening game, guys. I want to go against Mexico after what I saw from this Mexican team. Why not? I get the altitude. I get all the problems, all the uncomfortable situations, but the spotlight, think about it. I mean, everybody's going to be talking about your game. Days before, they're going to be talking about Paraguay and the story and everything we did in qualifiers. And it's going to give you that big stage setup already, before you leave the group stage. You're already going to have that big game against one of the teams that's going to host the World Cup. I would like that game. And just to start it off, because I don't like waiting 2-3 days also to see my team play. So I want to start off the World Cup with Paraguay. But I heard the guys. I don't know if you've been watching the interviews. I heard Gustavo Gomez saying he wants to play Portugal because he wants to face Cristiano Ronaldo. I heard Tony Sanabria say this weekend that he would love to play France, Spain, or even England. So the guys are talking about it, in the locker room. They're thinking about, hey, we could play against this team, we could play against that one, and they want to play against the big teams because the big teams don't want to play us lately. That's the reality, right? The calendar doesn't let us play the big powerhouses of Europe. So I want to go against these teams in the World Cup.
Yeah, no, Ralph. I mean, it's a good point that Fede had said. The first game of the World Cup would be June 11th, but then if they were to get into Group K or L, they have to wait until the 17th. So that's 6 days after, almost a week uh, until that. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the fact that these players are also talking about it, and we get used to it as well. Like, I'm talking about in the Premier League, like with players like Diego Gomez or Omar Lelete, like we had mentioned, or players that are in France and Julio Enciso. I just saw him play yesterday in the Conference League. Him playing in France and getting an idea of what French football is like, and maybe that could give him some sort of a chip on him if they were to play France at the World Cup. But yeah, no, I think it's really interesting that it is that sort of debate between, we were talking right before we got on the air about at least those that live in this sort of continent in the United States. The debate has been sort of like, would you rather Paraguay play the most easy group possible or the group that is the most accessible? in terms of distance. Like I said, there's a huge community of Paraguayans in the Northeast. There's I think three groups that have out of the 12 that have groups of mostly Northeastern venues, but then there are some groups like where Ralph is in Texas. I think there's one group, you get two groups in, like, depending on Paraguay, are in it. They get two games in Dallas, they'll get a couple in Houston, or there is some of that as well. So it's really the big factor of, like, it goes into who they face, when they face them, where they face them. It's a lot of things going on. So I think it's I mean, I don't remember this like this in 2010, rightly so. It was in South Africa and, at different times, but it feels like now this World Cup draw, and we're not even getting into the games and like analyzing like opponents and all that. The fact that we're talking about all of these sort of factors makes it even more of a special event that we're going to see on Friday.
Yeah, I think when it's been in the bigger countries, also when it was in Brazil, I mean Russia, I can't remember as well the
Yeah, me
draw,
either.
but with Brazil, I remember as well. It's a big thing. Also thinking how many miles you end up traveling. That's another thing to put in. So just depending on what it throws out, you're going to end up with some teams that have to travel. Let's say you get to the quarterfinals, right? Dream
Yep.
dream scenario, but some teams will have traveled so many more miles by that point than others, and that can be a big factor. So it's definitely something as well that they'll be thinking about. Where do Paraguay put their base? Because we were talking offline that the kind of the fan base is going to be around Miami for people coming into the country because maybe it's just easier. But for the team itself, they're going to have to think about that as well. You probably end up needing multiple bases as well, obviously, because of the kind of the distances. So there's a lot of stuff. Kind of at the moment it's the anticipation, and then in a week is get to work time, because then we'll be able to start nailing down the opponents, the travel itineraries, and everything, and get people on that job of analyzing opponents and getting ready for all of it. But just to the point that Fede makes about the players wanting to face all of these big talents. I think that's these professional players. That's what they want, right? We're as fans kind of thinking maybe we're more pragmatic, or can we get through? They're like, this is once in a lifetime for me. I want to play the very best players at the very biggest stage and prove that what I can do, because they all believe they can, and they've done it, right? They've beaten the world champions, they've beaten Brazil. So they're ready for that challenge, whoever it might be that comes up in the draw next week.
So I'll put you on the spot, Fede. I don't know if you have the pots in front of you, but I want you to pick your ideal World Cup group. What would you pick?
Okay, let's do this. No problem. I
Rob and
got it
Rob, you're gonna
right
do it too,
here.
then I'll do it. And then what we'll do is I'll run a simulator because I have it in front of me, and we'll pick out for three different simulators, and that you stick with that. And then yeah, we'll see what happens. So basically we get two options, and we have to see how close we are on December 5th, if that makes sense. So Fede, you go first. What group do you have? What would you prefer? And then I'll run a simulation for you.
Okay, so I gotta pick two teams, right?
You
I
gotta
gotta
pick
pick one from.
you gotta pick three. You gotta pick a
I
pot one,
gotta.
pick a pot one team, pick a pot two team, and then pick a pot four team. And remember, you can't have two teams from the same continent unless it's Europe. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with. I said Mexico. I want that first big game, so put that one down already. Mexico from the first pot.
I'll write that down.
From the second pot, that's the hardest one right there, right? Because you see a lot of potential in those teams. You see teams that have a lot of tradition also in the World Cup, and they could be very hard teams. And we have a couple of South American teams also there,
Can't play
so
them. You can't play them, as
we
you know.
can't play them. I'm thinking about why not Japan? Again, we've
Okay.
just played them, so Japan. We got a nation team there, and then from pot four.
Well, you got to pick a European team because that every team has to have one European team. So I don't know if you've been looking at the playoffs, and I'll give you the first hand. So it's a pick and choose. You got Italy, Denmark, Turkey, Ukraine, Poland. Just see if you can remember it. Wales, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ireland, Albania, Bosnia Herzegovina, Kosovo, Sweden, Romania, North Macedonia, and Northern Ireland. So just one team. Just first thing that you can pop up, you want them in that group.
Well, there was a certain coach that put some rivalry against the South Americans. So why not go against Italy? Why not? I love that one, and they weren't in the last World Cup. they're gonna come from the
Last two World Cups.
playoffs. Last two World Cups they missed, exactly. So it's gonna be a nice feeling for them if they make it. And I think that they could be a really good rival for us in the World Cup. I actually like that group for us. Italy, I like that one.
So Mexico, Japan, Paraguay, Italy. So that is your pick of your group. So let me run a simulation. I got it in front of me, and this is the one that you're gonna keep for the World Cup draw, if you're right. So, and this is all simulation, so it's obviously based on whoever you get in the playoff as well. So in this one, you get Mexico again, you get Croatia, and if they qualify, you get another European team, you get Sweden. So that is your simulated group. Mexico, Paraguay, Croatia, Sweden. Ralph, what about you? What do you say? What group would you want?
I've been looking at this while Fede was talking. I don't know. I mean, I kind of want. I'd like to play Portugal. That'd be cool. I think like Gustavo Gomez gets his dream against Ronaldo. That'd be fun.
Mhm.
Pot two is the hardest one, like Fede was saying, because you have like I don't know if I want to play South Korea or Japan again. I don't know how we do. Iran, that's probably going to be like a really defensive game. Maybe Morocco. I kind of like to play Morocco. So we could do Portugal, Morocco, and then let's play New Zealand again like we did in 2010.
All right, there you go. Portugal, Morocco, Paraguay, New Zealand. All right, so let me get a simulated group and what you will get and see how close you are. So Paraguay will be in, they will be in Group H. So they get France, they get South Korea, and they get Ghana in Group H. And
I mean, I'd take that one too. That's not too bad.
no, that's not bad
Korea
at
would be
all.
difficult, but I'll take it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good group to be. I'm just writing this down so everyone can remember. And now for me, I want to be as straightforward as possible. I'm not of the belief of like, I want the toughest group. I think all the games will be tough, but I also look at sort of, you want as easy as a group possible, and of course the closest one as well. So I'm going to pick, I'm going to pick Belgium. I don't know. I'm not convinced by this Belgium. I think it's, aside from the co-host, I think it's probably, Germany's lower ranked, but I think just Belgium is maybe the most winnable of the 12. So I'll pick Belgium. I'll say, yeah, I'll say Switzerland just because, they are one of those like, weird teams to face, but I think they are something that Paraguay can match up. And then I'll add some spice in it. I'll say Haiti. I'll say Haiti. So I think my group would be if it was the most easy of the group. I would say Australia, but then that would also add another European team. But I would say Belgium, Switzerland, Paraguay, and then Haiti. Or if it's not Switzerland, I would say Australia. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll say Australia. I'll say Australia just because we already have the European team. So Belgium, Australia, Paraguay, and Haiti. And let me see what we get for a simulated group. Let me see how lucky I am. And survey says I will get Group H of Belgium, South Korea, and DR Congo. That's actually a really good group as well. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm sure all you guys will be locked into December 5th. Obviously, at 12 p.m. it starts, 2 p.m. local time in Paraguay. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of coverage there. I'm curious to see what Alfaro and the players say afterwards. And yeah, I'm looking forward to also the weekend of the Clausura, who will be the champion, if it's going to be Cerro, if it's going to be Guarani, and of course, the Copa Libertadores. We also have the conference final in the MLS. We have Andres Cubas taking out Vancouver, taking on San Diego. The winner of that takes on Inter Miami against NYCFC. So it could be Andres Cubas versus Lionel Messi for the MLS Cup title the day after the draw. So it'll be December 6th. And of course, we will always cover that as we always do here on Guarani Vision as we close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.